Ladies and gentlemen, a potential grand final preview this Saturday night at the G against the Lions. It's time for all things black and white. Here we are as we're nearing closer. Thursday morning. I think it's time to take it up to the next level. The energy has been hard to temper it throughout this week. It's just been one of those weeks. I've been saying it in the stream. Something just feels different, exciting. A level of excitement that we probably haven't felt in a while because of how, I would say the first 6 to 8 weeks was a real dopamine dump for fans because we had the toughest of toughest matchups and we pretty much passed every challenge with flying colours. And then the last 6 to 8 weeks, you're sort of left with, all right, we're this far ahead of the competition. Going back a couple of weeks ago now, it's not so much the case now, but going back there, it's like, how do you motivate the team? How do you motivate the fan base to stay engaged with where we're at in the year? And when you do so well in that first half of the year, it's hard to match the same energy. But there's no need for extra motivation now. We're getting closer and closer to the final series. We need to see what our final side looks like. Will we see DeGoey named tonight? I certainly think he could. I hope he does. A sub, perhaps, is what Fly was alluding to. I think Bobby Hill starts. Billy Frampton, I'm hearing maybe reserves. I don't know about that. I'm just worried that Frampton's confidence might drop playing in a VFL, whereas he'd be less likely to experience that AFL level. And if he does at AFL level, then so be it. But don't let it be in the VFL. The thing is with Billy, there's been times where he's had role changes, he's been injured, he's been dropped, and then he comes back and he's never the same player. And that's happened in 2023 and 2024. So I'm just real mindful and skeptical with any unreasonable changes with how we manage Billy Frampton because he's such a confidence player. So that's where I stand with all of that. I'd love him to just play and then let it be. Some part of me thinks that Fly wants to acknowledge Charlie Dean's game against Richmond and see if Charlie can build on that. I just think it's too risky this late in the season to flirt with that. I understand it was a good game, but I also understand it was only Richmond and it's round 21. And we're potentially facing a team that we might see at the very least in the final series. We should see them in the final series, whether it's a grand final, a qualifying final, or a semi-final. We're probably going to see them. So play your best team that you have available against the team you might see later in the year. Don't give them any level of confidence. I remember, was it 2023 where they came to Marvel and they beat us quite convincingly when we had a bunch of outs. It didn't do much for them in that grand final, but I don't want to flirt with that. Simply do not want to flirt with that at all. Bring your big guns in. We'll find out more tonight on Moving the Magnets, which we'll be starting that stream at around 5:30 for those who want to know. We've had quite a decent record against Brisbane since the grand final. You go back to here, so this is the game at Marvel where it was a shootout, but we were quite undermanned. Remember that one? Anybody remember this one? That goal after the siren from Zach Bailey, and then this was, I think in 2021, by this time of the year, we were all pretty mentally exhausted and checked out from the year that we had to endure. Do I remember 2022 round 5? Can't say I do. Was that Easter Thursday? Yeah, it was. I think we tried to come back late in this one. I think Joe Danaher maybe kicked a goal late in the game to sort of secure the win. This one was after we'd started 3 or 4-0. I can't remember if there was an opening round in this year. I really can't. But we were we were undefeated. And then Brisbane jumped out of the gates in the first half. And funnily enough, we tried to put on some sort of comeback, but just wasn't possible in the end. And then, yep, that's the marvel. And then we marvel at this result. We get the grand final. This was the 0-4 game. So whoever loses goes 0-4. And somehow Brisbane go from 0-4, win a flag. Like, unbelievable. But anyhow, and then we beat them. Funnily enough, right? So, not that I want to identify this trend because it doesn't work in our favour in 2025. But late in 23, we beat them. Or they beat us, we win the flag. Late in 24, we beat them, they win the flag. Now, if we're following patterns, we beat them on Saturday and then they win the flag. But I'm not. Am I putting that out there? I don't know. I'm just stating the facts. I'm just stating the trends that I'm seeing in these results. So we won our last 4. I didn't realize how close the head-to-head records were at the G, 8-7. So would love to make that a bit more of a gap than what it is right now. And all-time 32-25. But that does it include Fitzroy and the Brisbane Bears? I'm not entirely sure. Brisbane is one of those teams where I don't think overall Collingwood have a positive record. I think it might be just Brisbane and West Coast that have a better head-to-head record. I'm pretty sure. Maybe if you guys want to follow that up and let me know in the comment section, that would be greatly appreciated. Anything here that's... Like, the biggest difference, it seems, when it comes to champion data is the defensive differences and the injuries they have with Jack Payne, who's an important bookend, and on the other side, no Joe Danaher. Surprisingly, this year, the Brisbane aren't super effective going inside forward 50 and converting their shots. However, I'd like to know what their last 10 weeks look like, though. So if we go here, that might give us a better idea of what their registration is like going inside forward 50. They're still quite poor in the last 10 games. Like 43% is not great. 47% is top 4 in the league for the Pies. So scoring shots per inside 50. So for every time we go inside 50, we're averaging nearly 1 scoring shot in every 2 inside 50 entries. So that's a really good return. So that is that. We're going to see a spectacle. A narrative will be the Ashcrofts versus the Dakai. That's going to be a really fun little narrative of the game. Dan Houston at training, a lot more ball in hand. I think I'd like to see what's his average been? 17 touches. Although this doesn't mean a great deal to me, I can see Dan Houston having a game where he accumulates 20 touches just based on the emphasis we're seeing at training to get the ball in Dan Houston's hands a little bit more. Let's see if that actually comes to fruition on Saturday night at the G. Looking at, I've got their injury report as well, just so we're across it from Brisbane's end. So Devin Robertson, Ty Gallup. Okay, so Dev Robertson, I remember this guy. I think his top got ripped against us, wasn't it? Anyhow, Kadeem Coleman is expected to miss 6 to 8 weeks with a quad strain from Saturday's VFL win against the Gold Coast Suns. Doesn't do much for my Supercoach draft. I brought him in at the start of the year and he's absolutely cooked me all the way through. Just never... It's so hard coming back from a long-term injury, and that's why you must applaud at players like Todd Mitchell who have come back and have stayed relatively unscathed with regards to health status. So 6 to 8 weeks, that's unfortunate because he is a gun, Kadeem Coleman. Connor McKenna was subbed out of Saturday's AFL game with the Suns due to a hamstring strain, which hurts. He's got a bit of speed coming on as a sub. And Kai Lohman, that's another one that's going to hurt them. 3 to 4 weeks with a calf strain. So they're going to be missing some players. They got McCarthy, who I think is touted to potentially come back this season, despite doing his ACL. Was it earlier this season, or was that? Yeah, I think he did it in the preseason again, or something along those lines, and they're going to try and get him back for one more attempt. Jack Payne done, Answorth done. Outside of these 3 injuries they've sustained, they're pretty healthy, their list. So they'd be going into this with not a great deal of excuses. Anything else worth noting here? Having a look here. Harris Andrews, must stop this man. Who's killing it with? Do we have coaches' votes here? Coaches' votes. No, but player rating tells us a little bit. Hugh McCluggage just silently going about his business this year. He'll poll well, so must stop him. Tom Mitchell and maybe a Lockie Neal. And on the wing, so Will is how much midfield time is he playing? I mean, Levi's more so playing wing, high half forward and whatnot, but we'll see what the matchups look like. Maybe we can flirt with that a little bit more when the teams come out through the final flock / moving the magnets. All right, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to leave it at that. And until tonight, we'll see you then. Go Pies.